Hi, I'm Anusha Sakui. I'm a staff writer at the LA Times, and I'm here to tell you 5 things you need to know about the writer's strike.
So we're on strike because the streamers and the studios are trying to turn writing from a career into a gig job. And we are fighting to make sure that it remains a career that allows you to live and work in Los Angeles. Woo!
So how did we get here? You could argue the seeds of this writer's strike started in 2007, 2008, when the writers then went on strike the last time 15 years ago to try and get access to compensation for their content being on the internet. And they were able to do that in that fight. Now, 15 years later, they're trying to catch up with the streaming revolution and trying to make sure that they're not getting left behind as companies double down on streaming, and all the content we watch, a lot of it now is via the internet. The writer's contract with the studios comes up for negotiation every 3 years. They started negotiations for this contract, which expired on May 1st, back in March. They weren't able to get a deal, and so the writers went on strike.
Over the last 10 years, I've watched my working conditions as a screenwriter completely change. When I started, a typical contract was a 3-step contract where you were guaranteed, like, you write a script and then you get notes and then you do a polish, and there was, over the last 10 years that's changed to 1-step contracts, which really invite a lot of exploitations of free work. Since the coming of streaming, there is this ethic that I think came from the tech industry of treating everyone as a gig worker in a gig economy. And I think we're already seeing in the gig economies that supposedly work that they don't work very well for the workers.
The two sides weren't able to come to an agreement over a new deal, over pay and conditions. So what were the sticking points? Well, there were a lot of them, especially if you listen to the WGA, the Writers Guild of America, who laid out all the different proposals that they made and the reaction from the studios. In short, the sticking points were increases to minimum pay, while the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers made an offer to the writers. It was not high enough for what the writers wanted. And then there were requirements by the WGA for minimum numbers of writers to be hired for TV shows and for them to be employed for a minimum amount of time. That was a big no for the studios. Then there is also the issue of residuals. These are royalties that writers are paid every time their show or film is re-aired. They wanted to introduce residuals based on viewership and some other improvements to their residuals. But the studios did make a counter offer, but it wasn't what the writers wanted. And then among the other issues, there were about 21 proposals. One standout point was the role of artificial intelligence. The writers want to start regulating artificial intelligence and how it's used in the creation of film and TV. But the studios, they only offered a regular meeting to talk about advancements in technology, and that wasn't good enough for the WGA.
And what's going on is that they're getting more work out of us and less pay, and they're also creating these things called mini rooms, which a lot of people don't know about. And what it is in these little mini rooms, they put as few writers as possible to do so much work, and it's because of streaming. Because streaming came in, years ago, but there's new rules and new things that don't apply to streaming that now have made it so exploitive for writers that they were like, well, most writers can't make a living if they continue with that model. And then the other thing, they're going to eventually want to replace writers, right? They'll be like, who needs a writer, right? It's like, all the works of art are out there. Why don't we just, create an algorithm? And the thing is that writers, yes, we're not robots, we're human beings.
Writers are worried that new advancements in AI could cut them out of jobs. And so the Writers Guild wants to put rules around how, if at all, artificial intelligence can be used to create new content or be the basis of new TV and films.
I'm so happy to be out here with writers because it's been incredibly frustrating to be in a windowless conference room dealing with company representatives who do not want to address writer concerns. And so, knowing the solidarity that our membership has and their willingness to fight, I'm out here and we'll take that back and we'll be ready to reach a deal when the companies want to have a real conversation about writer issues.
There are many rules for how writers should behave or act during the strike. But in short, they shouldn't do any work that is considered part of the WGA's remit. So effectively, they can't do any writing. And that has already led to the shutdown of a lot of TV shows and films. There are writers who have additional roles, showrunners of TV shows, for example, who are producers as well as writers. The WGA said even their role as producer is heavily limited. But the question will be, which showrunners will decide not to continue working on their producing roles and which might?
My frustration right now is it feels like we're out here on strike because this amount of money, it doesn't really change their bottom line. There just seems to be like, they just find it offensive that the people who produce their shows would ask for a living wage.
So starting May 2nd, 11,500 full members of the WGA went on strike. But are they alone? Yes, in theory, but they're accompanied in some ways by support from other unions that many have described as unprecedented in this round of negotiations. Already, the Teamsters Local 399, which are drivers, casting directors, location managers in Hollywood, have already said they won't cross the picket lines formed by the WGA. It's important to note some of those unions, such as SAG-AFTRA and the DGA, are not currently on strike and have contracts, so they can't say no to work unless they want to be replaced by their employer.
SAG-AFTRA is here, IATSE, Directors Guild, the Teamsters, everyone has come out in support because they understand that our fight for writer pay is the fight that they're facing next. And so we understand and we'll do as much as we can to support writers and everyone else in the industry who's affected by a shutdown. But I think everyone understands that this is a necessary fight given how much these companies pay their executives, and yet they're unwilling to make a fair deal here.
How long are you willing to strike?
As long as it takes to make a fair deal.
A big question now in Hollywood is how long the strike is going to last. That is a big question that no one has the answer to unless they have a crystal ball. But the consensus seems to be that the issues are so complex and the gap between the two sides is so big that it could last months. It could rival the 2007 and 2008 strike, which lasted 100 days, or it could rival the longest strike, which happened in 1988, which went on for 22 weeks. For its part, the AMPTP, the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, which represents studios in negotiations with unions, has said that it wants to reach a mutually beneficial deal. It says that it's offered generous compensation to increases to writers, and that it might have been even willing to make a better offer. But the sticking points of the numbers of writers being employed and the length of time that they were being employed for was too big a gulf for them to reach a deal on the night of May 1st. So if you're waiting on the next season of your favorite show, you might have to wait just a little bit longer.
Alexa, pay it! Alexa!